Tokyo, 1948. Two police officers are walking a routine patrol through the Waseda district. They pass a temple. Behind it, half buried in frozen soil, 5 small bodies, infants, newborns. The police start digging. They find more. 40 bodies at a mortician's house across town. 30 more in a temple nearby. Ashes, bones, the remains of children so small their entire lives could be measured in hours. Every single one of them came from the same place, a maternity hospital run by a woman named Miyuki Ishikawa. When they arrest her, she doesn't deny it. She admits everything. And here's the part you won't believe. She served 4 years in prison. 4 years. Then she walked free, became a real estate millionaire, and built herself an enormous tomb with her own name on it, while the families of those children received nothing. Not an apology, not a yen, not a grave marker. This is the Miyuki Ishikawa case, Japan's most prolific serial killer, and the country that thanked her. By the 1940s, Miyuki Ishikawa ran the Kotobuki Maternity Hospital in Shinjuku Ward, central Tokyo. She wasn't just a midwife. She was the director. She held positions in multiple midwife associations. She even ran for local political office in 1947. She was respected, credentialed, trusted, and that trust was about to become a weapon. This is where you need to understand the Tokyo that Miyuki Ishikawa was operating in. It's 1946. The war is over. Japan has surrendered. Allied bombing destroyed the rail lines. Food doesn't move. People stand in line for hours, sometimes entire days, just for a bowl of soup. And in this chaos, women give birth. Women who are poor. Women who are unmarried. Women who know they cannot feed a child. They bring their babies to the Kotobuki Maternity Hospital. They believe a midwife, a trained professional, will care for them, find them homes, give them a future. What actually happened was systematically documented. Every single midwife who worked at Kotobuki resigned. Every single one. They couldn't stomach what was happening. Miyuki Ishikawa was letting the babies die. She wasn't feeding them. She wasn't keeping them warm. She was taking money from desperate parents, large lump sums, and telling them it was cheaper than raising the child. Then she was leaving infants in rooms with no heat, no food, no care. But she wasn't doing it alone. Her husband Takeshi, the former military police sergeant, handled the money and the logistics, and a local doctor named Shiro Nakayama signed the death certificates. Natural causes, he wrote, over and over. The Shinjuku ward office never questioned it. The Kotobuki records tell the story in numbers. In 1943, 8 infants listed, 0 burial permits. In 1946, 40 infants, 24 burial permits. In 1947, 100 infants, 53 burial permits. 100 babies arrived, more than half of them left in the ground. Think about what the Kotobuki Maternity Hospital actually was. It was not hidden in some remote village. It was not a secret underground facility. It was in Shinjuku, the busiest ward in Tokyo. Even in the chaos of post-war Japan, Shinjuku was full of people. Neighbors, shopkeepers, other medical professionals. The hospital had staff. Midwives came and went. Patients arrived, gave birth, left. The ward office received death certificates, dozens of them, all signed by the same doctor, all listing the same cause of death. And no one asked a single question. This wasn't a killing that happened in the shadows. It happened in plain sight, over 2 years, with paperwork attached to every death. A midwife who couldn't have children of her own a husband trained in military discipline, a doctor willing to sign anything, and a bureaucracy that never looked too closely at dead orphans. The walls of Kotobuki Maternity Hospital were thin. Sound travels in a building like that. Crying, silence, crying, silence. For 2 years. Imagine living next door. Imagine working on the same street. Imagine processing the death certificates and doing nothing. January 12th, 1948. 2 police officers from the Waseda precinct are on patrol. They don't find the bodies because of a tip-off. They don't find them because of an investigation. They find them by accident, walking behind a temple, frozen ground, 5 small corpses. The autopsies are conclusive. None of the 5 infants died of natural causes. All of them came from Kotobuki. 3 days later, January 15th, police arrest Miyuki Ishikawa and her husband. The investigation expands rapidly. They search a mortician's house. Over 40 bodies. They search a temple. 30 more. Ashes. Bones. Fragments so small the examiners can barely identify them. The police investigation ultimately identifies 84 suspicious deaths. Prosecutors narrow it to 27 homicides for the indictment. The court would eventually convict on only 5. 5 murders, out of potentially 103 or more. Sources differ. Some estimates go as high as 169, but even the low end, 103, makes Miyuki Ishikawa the most prolific serial killer in Japanese history. The trial begins in 1948. The evidence is overwhelming. Confessions, witnesses, paperwork, bodies, and then Miyuki Ishikawa says something that changes everything. The parents abandoned these children. They are the ones responsible, not me. And here is the most disturbing part of this entire case. The Japanese public agreed with her. Newspapers ran sympathetic coverage. Public intellectuals defended her. Musei Tokugawa, one of the most famous cultural commentators in Japan, publicly supported her position. The logic was brutal, but simple. These children were unwanted. Their parents left them. In a starving nation, what was one midwife supposed to do? It worked. On October 11th, 1948, the Tokyo District Court convicted Miyuki Ishikawa of 5 murders by omission, the equivalent of involuntary manslaughter. The sentence, 8 years in prison. Takeshi got 4 years. Dr. Nakayama got 4 years. 8 years. For 100 dead infants. But here is the part that makes your stomach drop. The couple appealed the sentence, and in 1952, the Tokyo High Court reduced it. Miyuki Ishikawa, 4 years. Takeshi, 2 years. She had already served most of it by the time the appeal concluded. She walked free. At this point, you're probably asking the same question I asked when I first researched this case. How? How does a woman who confessed to killing over 100 babies serve 4 years and walk away? The answer is in what the case reveals about Japan in the 1940s. The victims were abandoned children, illegitimate, poor. In the eyes of the legal system at that time, their lives held less value. The court didn't see a serial killer. They saw a midwife who made difficult choices in desperate times. The charge was murder by omission, not premeditated homicide. They viewed it as neglect, not killing, and the law itself was broken. Infanticide by parents had been treated as bodily injury resulting in death under the Japanese Criminal Code until 1907. The legal system was not designed to protect unwanted infants. It was designed to look the other way. Miyuki Ishikawa understood this. She exploited a system that didn't value the lives of the poor. She knew she could claim the parents were responsible and that society would believe her. She was right. But the story doesn't end there, because what happened next is worse. This is the point where I need to pause, because these are the cases I cover on this channel. Japan, Korea, China, Southeast Asia, cases that Western true crime almost never touches. The Junko Furuta case, the Hwaseong serial killer, the Shiori Ino case, and now Miyuki Ishikawa. If these stories matter to you, subscribe, hit the bell, and if this case made you feel something, anger, disbelief, the cold realization that justice is not automatic, drop a comment. I read everyone. Now let me tell you what Miyuki Ishikawa did with her freedom, because this is where it goes from infuriating to almost impossible to process. After her release, Miyuki Ishikawa didn't hide. She didn't disappear into some quiet village and live out her days in anonymity. She went into business. She started selling soap, then cream, then fish. Then she got into real estate. By the 1960s, she was running her own real estate agency in Tokyo, Asahi Shoji, the same address as the old Kotobuki Maternity Hospital. In 1969, a journalist from Shukan Shincho magazine tracked her down for an interview. She was 72 years old. Takeshi was dead by then, and she was unrepentant. She claimed she was innocent. She said the real criminals were the parents. She boasted about her wealth. Her lawyer estimated she had earned over 100 million yen. And then she told the journalist something that still haunts this case. 2 years earlier, she had built herself a tomb. An enormous, expensive tomb, with her own name carved into it. The woman who let over 100 infants die, whose bodies were buried in unmarked graves, whose ashes were scattered across temples and mortuaries, had the money and the audacity to build herself a monument. She lived in the same building where the babies died until the end. Her name stayed in the Tokyo telephone directory, same address as Kotobuki, for more than 30 years after the trial. No one came for her. No one protested. No one demanded justice. She died on May 30th, 1987. She was 90 years old. There's one more thing. 6 months after Miyuki Ishikawa's arrest, July 13th, 1948, the Japanese government passed the Eugenic Protection Law. 1 year later, in 1949, abortion was legalized in Japan for economic reasons. The Miyuki Ishikawa case directly triggered the legalization of abortion in Japan. Politicians looked at what happened at Kotobuki and said, this happened because women had no options. If abortion were legal, desperate mothers wouldn't abandon their babies. Midwives wouldn't be overwhelmed with unwanted infants. This would never happen again. They weren't wrong, but think about what that means. Miyuki Ishikawa killed over 100 infants, and the government's response was to change the law, not to punish her, but to prevent other women from ending up in her situation. The system looked at a serial killer and decided the problem was not the killer. The problem was the mothers who couldn't afford their children. The problem was the poverty. The problem was everything except the woman holding the pillow. She died free. She died rich. She died old. And the law she triggered changed the lives of millions of Japanese women, for the better, arguably, while she never expressed a moment of remorse. History remembers her as the reason abortion became legal in Japan, not as a monster, as a catalyst. 103 infants, maybe more. No gravestones, No memorials. No one to remember their names. And one woman who built herself a tomb with her own money, in her own name, while the ashes of the children she killed sat in unmarked temples across Tokyo. The Miyuki Ishikawa case is not just a true crime story. It is a mirror held up to what happens when a society decides some lives are worth less than others. When a bureaucracy refuses to ask questions. When a legal system can look at 100 dead babies and call it negligence. She exploited a nation at its most vulnerable, and the nation let her walk. If this video gave you something, subscribe. There are more cases like this coming. Cases where the crime is only the beginning, where the real horror is what happened after. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.